I've been telling you, if you're watching at home, how we're going to go through each of this. We just hit the key points on the Ukraine plot, the report arguing that's impeachable on its own. Now, before I bring in our next experts, I want to walk you through something that you need to know about if you're going to discuss any of this in the days and weeks ahead. What Democrats say is another impeachable offense, basically. The report recounting that Trump covered up and obstructed the probe. Now, this is key because it is the Democrats' answer to Donald Trump's very brazen, months-long defiance of this and other congressional probes. And whether Donald Trump knows it or not, the only two presidents who've ever been impeached both faced articles of impeachment for, guess what? Defying Congress and obstruction. Tonight's new report says that despite that history, Donald Trump may have even gone further as he is, quote, the first and only president in history to defy all aspects of the constitutional impeachment process, and the investigation laying out examples like defying 71 requests for documents across federal agencies, attacking and impugning people who were just cooperating with the investigation or law enforcement, including, count them up, 100 statements against the whistleblower who's protected under federal law, also blocking testimony from another 12 witnesses, including key officials like Mulvaney, Perry, Bolton. I'm speaking about some of the amigos, if you will. The report also detailing how Trump aides acted in ways that seemingly looked like concealment, like hiding. Ambassador Volker arranging a key call and then requesting that everyone use the encrypted messaging service WhatsApp, the report noting that one of its key features is the ability to delete forever what comes up in conversation. Now think about this. There's a really big irony here. Maybe it's already on your mind. These individuals went out of their way to avoid using government emails so they wouldn't get caught. But then there was so much heat on some of them that the only reason we know any of this is that some of the WhatsApp messages were not deleted. So as the State Department and Trump White House continue to defy and stonewall those requests, it is Gordon Sondland's WhatsApp messages seeded through this report that show some of the alleged obstruction. I want to bring in Matt Miller, who's worked at the Justice Department in the Obama administration, and former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner. Good evening. I want to turn both of your expert attention to the obstruction portion. Glenn, what case does it make?
So, Ari, if the abuse of office allegation is a bit of an outside jump shot, then I think the obstruction allegation is going to be a layup. You have the president, who is often his own worst enemy, who stood up on camera and said, I will comply with exactly 0 congressional subpoenas. And then he made good on that promise by ordering administration officials who could provide not just relevant information, but now we know, courtesy of this report, and we even knew it before we began to absorb this report, they can provide incriminating information about the president's plot to bribe and extort President Zelensky for Trump's own political gain. That is a charge obstructing the congressional inquiry that I think you can make in your sleep, given the evidence we have.
Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with that. There are a few things that strike me about the obstruction portion of this report. Number one, just how far-reaching and wide-ranging the president's obstruction was. It wasn't just any one thing. It was withholding documents. It was blocking witnesses from testifying. And when some witnesses did come forward and testify over the president's objections, actually intimidating them, attacking them on Twitter and trying to keep them from testifying. That it's so unprecedented. The report notes that even Richard Nixon, the only president to have to resign in the face of an impeachment inquiry, even he let witnesses come forward and turned over some documents. And then the thing that the report doesn't really note, but that I'm struck by, is how much more information we would have if the president hadn't obstructed this inquiry. When we were watching the hearings and Mick Mulvaney figured so prominently and John Bolton figured so prominently, John Bolton, who met with the president to discuss withholding aid to Ukraine, I kept thinking how much more information we would have if those witnesses came forward. But when you see that Rudy Giuliani was calling OMB someone who he should be having no contact with,
right,
you understand why the president prevented the OMB officials from coming forward and testifying.
Matt, let's dig into that. And you've prepped people for these hearings, and they could be bruising when you look at who testified and who different. Corey Lewandowski has caught heat on this program and others for being a liar, a confessed liar, and we fact-checked him on that. But I want to say, in fairness to Corey Lewandowski, the Mueller probe did not find him to be a criminal. When he showed up, guns blazing at the Judiciary Committee hearing, some people felt he did okay, partly because he was able to push back on the criminal stuff. They didn't really land that. That's my take. I'll leave time for yours. By contrast, if Mr. Giuliani, who's currently under this defying it, if he showed up and they said, what the heck were you doing calling and getting called back by OMB in April? What the heck were you doing taking money, hundreds of thousands of dollars from these foreigners without registering as a foreign lobbyist, going around the world and then trying to frame the Bidens? What the heck were you doing? I'm not sure under oath that he would fare well. He might increase his legal exposure in an open probe in New York. And so how much of this really comes down to the fact that as bad as defiance looks, even to this day, it might be impeachable, cooperating for some of them looked even worse, Matt.
I think that is exactly right. I think that's the calculation they made. And that's why not only do you not see Rudy Giuliani, that's why you don't see any of these other witnesses from the administration. Because if they came forward and testified truthfully, their answers would be incredibly damning to the president. And it's one thing for them to go out and do kind of what Mike Pompeo does with the press, where he'll try to bully reporters, where he'll flat out lie sometimes. You can't do that in front of a congressional committee, at least if you want to. You can't do it unless if you want to avoid criminal charges.
And Glenn, so I'm running out of time. I want to bring Glenn, there's also no backseas. All these updates and additions and ASAP Rocky, refresh my memory. At a certain point, too much of that on substantive matters will get you indicted.
I agree with you both. Defiance is really all that's left for Giuliani, Pompeo, Mulvaney, Perry. Look, it's no coincidence that in paragraph 2 of the executive summary, guess who gets called out as potential co-conspirators? Perry, Mulvaney, Pompeo. And listen, we all know that AG Barr thinks that the president can't be investigated, indicted, tried, convicted, or imprisoned because of this crazy unitary executive theory. But you know what? There is no such thing as an OLC memo that protects a Secretary of State, a Secretary of Energy, an OMB director, or acting chief of staff. There is no unitary Secretary of State theory. So when I read this today, Ari, I thought, I certainly hope that the FBI is investigating the people who can and should be charged because of their complicity with the president's scheme to coerce this help from Zelensky.
Yeah, and I can't see the future, but I read precedents like any other lawyer, and there's a lot of precedents of people in government who have gone down for less, at a lower level, at lower stakes, and a lower dollar figure than some of what is laid out in this report. Quite something. Matt Miller and Glenn Kirshner, thanks to you. We have a lot more in the program. The Republican lawmaker implicated in the plot. Nunes, secret call logs. Did he know this was about to hit him today? We're going to get into all of that.